Welcome to the Blessors of Israel Podcast. I'm Matthew Dodd, Executive Director of Blessors of Israel. Honored to once again be in the studio with Pastor Rich Jones, the founder and chairman of Blessors of Israel. Well, this week is going to mark, I think, another important turning point in regards to this nuclear issue with Iran. Diplomats from Iran, the United States, met today in Geneva to discuss the nuclear options. The takeaways were kind of interesting. Iran came out right out of the gate and basically said, hey, we're able to agree on certain types of things.
Yeah.
But then Vice President J.D. Vance pretty much came out and said, more of the same.
Not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah.
And so what are we to make of all this?
Well, firstly, there's conversation. That's something. Meanwhile, our naval fleets are sailing.
Yeah, you have the Abraham Lincoln that's already there.
Gerald R
is on its way.
Yeah.
It should be there in about 3 to 4 weeks.
So, I think show of strength is always good for diplomacy.
Last week I wrote an article called Trump's Aircraft Carrier Diplomacy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Speak softly, carry a big stick. But although, I don't think we're speaking softly. In fact, Iran just came out and said, can we just stop it with the threats, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
then Khamenei comes out and says, oh, by the way, what's more devastating than an aircraft carrier is the missile that takes down the aircraft carrier to the bottom of the sea.
Saber rattling,
exactly.
Of course, right? But
he does it right before the negotiations. So that makes me wonder, okay, so how legitimate is this? Is it just more posturing from Iran? We've seen this over and over again. All they want to do is push the ball down the path a little bit further, wait for the next administration, or frankly, the midterms, when it looks like the Democrats may take over the House and the Senate. Possible.
Right.
We don't know. But they're pushing that down. Delay tactics, more of the same as far as I'm concerned.
So look at what is to be gained, right? So what is it Iran that want? What is it they want? Well, number one, they want a nuclear weapon. But number two, they want these sanctions to be taken off because they're devastating. They have just absolutely rocked their economy. And the water issues are still very much so. It's falling apart. The infrastructure of Iran is falling apart, right?
It is.
So they need these sanctions to stop. That's very important for them. But at the same time, they want a nuclear weapon. The United States says, you're not getting a nuclear weapon. It will destabilize the entire region. So, we're at an impasse. This is why Vance is coming out and saying, we're really not making any headway. There are red lines, and we're not even close to any kind of agreement at this point. Now, can we get there? Well, at least we're still talking. But I want to bring up this. These protests that were just rocking Iran just a couple of weeks ago, we were thinking maybe this is the moment, that it will topple.
Yeah.
And nothing happened.
Yeah, exactly right. There were promises that things would happen, but at the end of the day, nothing did happen.
No. And thousands have lost their lives. I think, in fact, I believe that Iran is saying, themselves are saying, I read 36,000 have lost
they
their
were
lives?
saying about 3,100.
Okay,
but
maybe
then there are other
wrong.
reports that are coming out. They're saying, upwards of 36,000, maybe 53 that have been arrested, 53,000 that have been arrested. So you're talking about tremendous impact. And then this last Sunday, there were more uprisings and protests and chants from apartment windows, death to Khamenei, and all of that.
And of course, President Trump was stating, if you harm the protesters, that there will be consequences. But the problem is, I think, Trump is famous for his grand statements. We've seen that over and over and over. But the people of Iran believed that. The people of Iran really were hoping for some kind of support.
Well, and I think especially after what happened last year, when we came in support of Israel. We struck those nuclear sites for Iran. And they're thinking at this point, okay, so finally we have an administration that means what they say and is going to do what they say.
Right, but that didn't happen.
But it didn't happen.
And I think Iran took notice. It didn't happen. So, that's very difficult when you're coming into negotiations. And
I agree.
And you're not standing by what you said. But I think also United States put them themselves in a very difficult place because, you say you want to bring some kind of consequence. How are you going to do that without harming innocent protesters? Really, any bombardment from the air is going to bring collateral damage, right? So it's a very difficult conundrum when you start making those big statements.
It is.
But the people relied on that help, and they didn't get it, and thousands, whatever that number is, many, too many have lost their lives.
Exactly right. And what's interesting is we've seen that same type of scenario play out in Gaza.
Right, exactly.
Promise.
Right.
Now, we've got more traction there.
That's right, true.
And so that's good. I mean, there's going to be the Board of Peace meeting on Thursday of this week. And so we'll see what kind of traction. 19 nations have signed on.
Yes.
I believe they're expected to pony up about $1 billion each.
That's the entry ticket.
So far, we're looking at about $5 billion that's come in that will be announced. So it looks like there's some traction there as well. But back to your point, I couldn't agree with you more. If you're going to say something, and it is true, we have the U.S.S. Gerald R. Ford coming in from the Mediterranean or from the Caribbean, 3 to 4 month, 3 to 4 week journey there. So that does bring some more firepower. But at the same time, you have the Strait of Hormuz. Iran shut that down today, and then guess what? China and Russia say, we want to join those drills.
Well,
so that's an interesting little dynamic. There's that appeal to greater power that Iran has made to Russia and to China. And Russia, their leadership comes out and says, well, we're looking at an alternative to the U.S. and the West in regards to the seas. And so we are looking for that, and we've seen that with the BRICS nations, right? It's all looking for a way to undermine the strength of the United States.
Sure. And, they say it's a war game, but they shut it down, right? That's an act of war itself, right? So we're talking about some very dangerous maneuvers, but the United States is also sending naval fleets. So, and of course, the issue is nobody wants war. Certainly, Trump has proven that he does not want war. He has certainly, I think, won some respect that way. I think Russia, Ukraine certainly understand he's trying to win peace. Gaza, it was for peace. I mean, I think he's proven that. But at the same time, Israel's economy was just not, I can't say destroyed, but tremendously impacted by the war in Gaza, right?
Yeah.
I mean, tourism is one of the largest economic factors in economies, and it just was devastated. And so now they're rebuilding, and they're kind of starting to see a resurgence of people coming back.
They sure are, 3.1% growth. It's a phenomenal. Here you see the Iranians, they're collapsing, but they have all the restrictions. But you had the threat from other nations against Israel, different types of sanctions, and yet they're thriving in spite of all that.
They're growing more than the United States by percentage. So therefore, I say that because Israel do not want a hot war with Iran. Right now, recently they came out and said that, Arrow 4, that's their new
they're going to be deploying
defense.
that within the next few weeks.
and of course, they've been developing the laser defense systems as well.
Cutting edge, by the way. No one else in the world is doing what they're doing.
Absolutely. And as we would expect, Israel has always been on the cutting edge of technological advancement. But laser defense systems are just amazing. And now, of course, the development of AI is going to come in and really be a factor when it comes to these systems, which, of course, we also are amazed about. But back to this point, 3.1% growth, right? That's amazing. No, Israel does not want a hot war. The United States does not want a hot war either. But so many people have lost their lives. This is a crucial point that there has to be some breakthrough here.
And I would add China and Russia don't either. I mean, I think
I agree.
They want the distraction in the Middle East because China wants to focus on Taiwan.
Right.
And Russia, we know what they're doing with Ukraine.
And I'll tell you what, that's very interesting, by the way, that I would love at some point to talk about Ukraine and Russia again, because
there were more meetings after the meeting with Iran and the United States.
That's still going on.
Also in Geneva.
and we're hoping to see some breakthrough there. But interestingly, Ukraine has made some advancements recently.
Yeah.
Tremendous advancements, actually. Some of the biggest advancements they made in 2 years. And a lot of that, I think, is connected to, Musk shutting down Starlink as far as Russia's access to it. That has made a tremendous impact. And maybe that will bring more pressure, and I think that's the point, more pressure on Russia to end this thing, right? Yeah. But back to my point, which is that, Russia and China, they're looking for alliances, right? Strengthening these alliances to become the world power. Well, the order of world powers are changing.
They are,
right before our eyes, dynamically changing. And the Middle East is the key to really the biblical understanding of what's happening now. Because I think, it's very interesting to see the geopolitics and the movement of nations, but it all must be seen in the backdrop of prophecy.
Great.
And we know that the nations that we're speaking of here, Russia, for example, clearly named in scriptures, and will be bearing forth a tremendous force against Israel in the latter days.
Will lead the coalition against Israel.
And we're seeing it right now.
Yes.
Iran, ancient Persia, and on and on. We are watching.
Turkey.
And Turkey. Oh, we must not forget Turkey.
By the way, did you hear in the news that Turkey has established, I believe, 6 new mosques in Gaza?
I did not hear
recently.
That, really.
So again, and in fact, you have many military and political advisors in Israel saying, while we're watching Iran, look out for Turkey, because now they're making that pivot as a member of NATO.
Right.
And also a very strong army, untested, but nevertheless, they've got a large army.
Yeah.
We have some serious issues. And again, biblically speaking, as you just mentioned a moment ago, it's all within the Bible.
Yes.
It speaks of that coalition led by Russia. And by the way, what is Russia also trying to do? Strengthen ties back in Syria again.
That's right.
So when you put all these things together, very significant developments. And as we've talked about before, I believe, are witnessing the unfolding of the preparation, the fulfillment in preparing for Ezekiel 38 and 39, where Israel is surrounded, the battle of Gog and Magog. God delivers, but we're seeing the stage being set for that.
That's right. So we have to keep watching these very critical developments. Iran right now is central, right? We have to keep our eye on what is happening with Iran. We just do not want a hot war, but this is monumental.
But I want your opinion, honest opinion, which I know you would do that anyway. But here's the thing. It just seems with Iran we have more of the same. They're just pushing that down. Would you agree? I mean, is this really going to go anywhere? When they say we have agreed to certain principles, does that mean we have something actual, something concrete, or is it just political speak?
Well,
diplomatic speak.
Right. But can we maintain the status quo? Can Iran maintain the status quo? I mean, they're crumbling. Right?
It's true.
So how long can they go on?
Now, by the way, they also met with the head of the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Association, right before the talks. So clearly there's some posturing that's going on that front.
Right.
How well did that work out when it came to the UN monitoring?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. But again, my point is they can't afford status quo forever. Right? They are crumbling. That water issue, I think that's a whole nother topic that needs to be brought up. They have no water. Well, some, of course, but there's a water crisis.
Well, they're looking at moving their capital.
Exactly, because of the water crisis.
Exactly right.
So we have an infrastructure crumbling. They can't do this forever. They're motivated, of course. They want to be a power player. They want the empire syndrome is still alive there in Iran. And so we have to watch carefully, because there's a lot of pressures coming that are coming against this whole circumstance. And of course, and there's Israel, right? The animosity against Israel is still very much alive.
Agreed. And the other thing to keep in mind is Israel and their red lines are different than what we're seeing right now, even with President Trump.
That's right.
Because they're focusing on the nuclear issue, but Israel's also saying, hey, we got a ballistic missile issue.
That's right.
Because as we've reported recently, they're churning out ballistic missiles. They're increasing their capacity and capability to churn those out because they want to plan on striking again.
Because they are in fact rebuilding. They're strengthening Hezbollah, for example. We know that's the case, right? And
that's why Israel keeps strategically
exactly
picking them off, their leaders and whatnot. By the way, one of the things I do appreciate that Vice President Vance said is that it's up to the president to determine when negotiations have basically run their course.
Right.
And I'm glad he said that because, I have to trust, and I pray for them daily. I'm sure you do as well. I pray for our leaders. I pray for Israel. I pray for Israel's enemies. Mm-hmm. But I'm praying that there will be that discernment in realizing, okay, enough is enough. There's a point where, okay, enough of the posturing, enough of more of the same. Something has to change. And clearly, Iran only understands force.
I agree. At the same time, we have to be very careful that you don't start something that you can't finish.
I agree. And what I've been reading is that the United States is preparing for weeks of battle in the event that this goes kinetic.
Yes, but that would be devastating to the Middle East.
But once you open up that can of worms,
no, that's right.
There's no guarantees as to what. Once you're in the fog of war, you can chart all these things out, but there are so many different variables that can come in that make it difficult to protect the outcome.
But when you notice, however, let's change the focus just for a moment to Venezuela. When you notice that, right, the United States swept in with special forces, arrested Maduro, pulled him out, but did not follow up with a hot war. Mm-hmm. Right, very strategically, carefully precise.
Yeah.
But now they showed what they can do, got the respect of the rest of the leaders, and are saying, now let's negotiate. Now that was a very strategically great move because we were not facing a hot war. Now, can we do something like that? See, that would be strategic if that were possible. And I think that Trump is looking for such a thing. Nobody wants a hot war. Iran doesn't. Israel doesn't.
Yeah.
United States doesn't.
We don't want to be sucked into that.
Absolutely not. So this is critical. We're at a very, very important stage in this whole thing. We need to watch it very carefully because, as we know, Iran is very, very key to the latter days. We got to watch.
I agree. And we need to be in prayer and stay alert. That's why we curate the news. That's why we do what we do to keep our supporters, our partners informed. And thank you again for joining us today. And I'm so grateful that you joined us as well. And by the way, if you're joining us for the very first time, I want to make sure you know the mission and the vision for Blessors of Israel. And the greatest way to do just that is to go to our website at www.blessors.org. That's Blessors with an ors.org. First, you can go to our homepage there, and that'll take you to our vision and mission page. There you can understand why we do what we do. And in essence, what we do here is we want to inform the church so we know how to stand with Israel and support her people in the latter days. By the way, also go to our newsroom. There you will discover not only curated news pulled from various news sources, trusted news sources from around the world concerning Israel and the Middle East, but you'll also discover original articles with a biblical perspective so that you can be well informed about Israel and what's going on right now. The other thing I'd like to have you do is, if you haven't done so already, make sure you like this podcast and subscribe to this channel. And make sure you share it with your friends, the people you go to church with, so that they too can be informed. You can follow us on Facebook, X, and Getter. And please also know that we appreciate your prayers and your financial partnership as we build this vital, important ministry. Remember, those who bless Israel will be blessed. Shalom, shalom.